A bloodied corpse of a young human girl lay crumpled in the shadow of a towering alien warship, the brutality of her death serving as the final provocation for an ancient human fleet to rise from dormancy, hell-bent on galactic vengeance. Captain Bruce Allen punched the flashing comm button, jaw tight as the urgent distress call from Epsilon 9 flooded his ship's bridge. The remote human mining colony was under siege by unknown hostiles. Alien weaponry had shattered their defenses. Allen's fleet of 3 UEF ships, humanity's finest, launched toward the distant world, racing to respond as humanity's first and last line of defense. Dropping out of warp, they beheld Epsilon 9 in ashen ruins, scattered with strange debris and mangled bodies. A monstrous alien dreadnought shimmered into view, weapons aimed to annihilate. The sneering face of a Cardassian commander filled the viewscreen, demanding Earth's surrender. Allen grimaced, fists clenched. He knew his outmatched ships couldn't repel firepower of that magnitude, yet he refused to yield. Then a coded transmission from UEF Command revealed the chilling truth. Epsilon 9 wasn't just some freak skirmish. The Cardassians had orchestrated a secret invasion spanning human space, with this colony as the bloody catalyst. Now only Allen's 3 lone ships stood between mankind and galactic conquest, at the hands of a vastly superior alien foe. The survival of the human species itself teetered on a razor's edge, as Allen and his brave crew steeled themselves for the fight of their lives against the Cardassian onslaught. If they failed here, humanity would fall. They had to hold the line. They were our only hope now. The battle raged on, the Valiant quaking under the relentless Cardassian assault. Amidst the chaos, a flicker of hope appeared on the radar. The UES Siren, a small UEF scout ship, dropping out of warp near the besieged colony. Captain Allen, incoming transmission from the Siren, the COEMS officer reported, his voice strained. It's Lieutenant James Hawkins, sir. He says he has crucial information about the Cardassians' motives. Allen's brow furrowed as he patched Hawkins through. The young lieutenant's face appeared on the viewscreen, his expression grave. Captain, the Cardassians aren't just after Epsilon 9 for its strategic value, Hawkins began, his words tumbling out in a rush. They're searching for a young human girl named Lily. She has a rare genetic mutation that gives her extraordinary abilities. Allen leaned forward, his interest piqued. What kind of abilities? We're not entirely sure, sir, but the Cardassians have been secretly experimenting on humans for years, trying to unlock the secrets of our DNA. Lily is the product of one of those experiments. She escaped from a Cardassian research facility and sought refuge on Epsilon 9. A chill ran down Allen's spine. The implications were staggering. Where is she now? Suddenly the Valiant shuddered violently. Alarms blared as the ship's hull was breached. Allen's heart raced. He knew Karos all too well, a ruthless Cardassian commander with a reputation for brutality. If he was here, it could only mean one thing. He was determined to capture Lily at any cost. All hands repel boarders, Allen barked into the comm. Lieutenant Hawkins, get that girl to safety. We'll hold them off as long as we can. The bridge descended into chaos as the Cardassians stormed the ship, their weapons blazing. Allen drew his phaser, his jaw set with determination. He had to protect Lily, no matter the cost. Amidst the smoke and the screams, Allen caught sight of Karos, his eyes glinting with malice. The two commanders locked in a brutal hand-to-hand fight, trading blows with savage intensity. But despite Allen's skill, Karos quickly gained the upper hand, his superior strength and technology overwhelming the human captain. As Karos loomed over him, ready to deliver the killing blow, a sudden burst of psychic energy sent the Cardassian flying across the room. Allen looked up in shock to see Lily emerging from a nearby hiding spot, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. In the aftermath of the battle, as the Valiant limped away from the carnage, Allen realized the true stakes of the conflict. Lily's powers could be the key to stopping the Cardassian invasion, but protecting her would come at a great cost. The Cardassians would stop at nothing to capture her and unlock the secrets of her abilities. As the Valiant shook and groaned under the onslaught of Cardassian fire, Captain Allen knew their time was running out. The ship's shields were failing, and the hull breaches were growing larger by the second. He turned to Lieutenant Hawkins, his face grim. "Hawkins, you need to get Lily out of here. Take her to the Zeta Reticuli system in the Siren. There's a hidden UEF research station there that might be able to help her." Allen shook his head. "The Valiant and Resolute will stay behind to cover your escape. It's the only way." Hawkins looked like he wanted to argue, but the ship shuddered violently and he knew there was no time. He grabbed Lily's hand and raced towards the hangar bay, dodging debris and sparks as the ship fell apart around them. But as they approached the Siren, they found their path blocked by a group of Cardassian soldiers who had managed to infiltrate the ship. Hawkins pushed Lily behind him and raised his weapon, firing off a series of shots that took down 2 of the soldiers. But there were too many of them and they were closing in fast. Hawkins felt a surge of desperation as he realized he was outmatched. He couldn't let them take Lily, not after everything they'd been through. He was about to make a final stand when a figure emerged from the shadows behind the Cardassians. The figure moved with incredible speed and precision, taking out the soldiers one by one with a series of quick, brutal strikes. Hawkins watched in amazement as the figure dispatched the last of the Cardassians and turned to face them. "Ghost Squadron at your service," the figure said, removing his helmet to reveal a rugged, battle-scarred face. "Sergeant John Reese, we need to move now." Hawkins nodded, grabbing Lily's hand and following Reese into the Siren. As they strapped in and prepared for launch, the Valiant exploded behind them, taking out a large portion of the Cardassian fleet in a massive fireball. Lily let out a cry of horror as she watched the ship disintegrate, but Hawkins put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said softly. "We're going to get you to safety." As the Siren sped away from the battle, Hawkins turned to Reese. "What do you know about Lily?" he asked. "Why are the Cardassians so determined to capture her?" Reese's face darkened. "It's not just her," he said grimly. "The Cardassians have been abducting human children from across the galaxy for years, subjecting them to horrific experiments in an attempt to create a new breed of super soldiers." Hawkins felt a chill run down his spine. "And Lily is one of them?" Reese nodded. "She's not the only one with special abilities, but she's the most powerful we've ever seen. That's why I've been tasked with protecting her and bringing her to the research station on Zeta Reticuli. Our scientists there have been working on a way to harness her powers and create a weapon capable of stopping the Cardassian invasion once and for all." Suddenly an alarm blared on the Siren's console. Hawkins checked the sensors and felt his blood run cold. "We've got company," he said grimly. "A massive Cardassian fleet in orbit around Zeta Reticuli." Reese leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he saw the familiar ship at the center of the fleet. "Karos," he growled. "That bastard just won't die." Lily whimpered in fear, and Hawkins put an arm around her shoulders, trying to comfort her even as his own heart raced with terror. They were so close to safety, but now it seemed like the Cardassians were waiting for them, ready to crush the UEF's last hope of survival. The Siren approached the research station, its engines straining as Hawkins pushed them to their limits. But as they drew closer, the Cardassian ships began to move, forming a blockade around the station and cutting off their escape route. Reese cursed under his breath, his hands flying over the weapons console as he tried to find a way through the Cardassian lines. But there were too many ships, too many guns pointed at them from every angle. The Siren approached Zeta Reticuli, entering a treacherous field of floating debris from destroyed ships. Hawkins gripped the controls tightly as he swerved to avoid collision. On the scanners, the massive Cardassian fleet loomed ahead, weapons charged and ready to obliterate them. "There's no way through," Hawkins muttered grimly. "They've got us cornered." Reese leaned forward, studying the tactical display. "Wait, what if we use the Siren's cloaking device to sneak past them?" Hawkins frowned. "The cloak won't hide us for long. We'd be detected as soon as we get close." "Not if we create a diversion." Reese's eyes gleamed with a dangerous idea. "I'll take the shuttle and draw their fire. You and Lily can slip by in the siren while they're focused on me." Hawkins shook his head vehemently. "No way, it's suicide. I won't let you—" "We don't have a choice," Reese cut in, his voice steely. "Lily is too important. We have to get her to that research station, no matter the cost." Lily, huddled in the corner, looked up at them with wide, frightened eyes. Hawkins met her gaze and felt a surge of protectiveness. Reese was right. He had to keep her safe, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Moments later, the shuttle's engine flared to life, drawing the attention of the Cardassian ships like moths to a flame. Laser fire erupted as they converged on Reese's position. Hawkins gunned the siren's engines, engaging the cloaking device. The ship shimmered and vanished from view. Heart pounding, he wove through the chaos of the battle, the Cardassian ships so close he could see the cruel faces of their commanders through the viewports. Just as they cleared the fleet, a massive explosion lit up the darkness behind them. Hawkins watched in horror as Reese's shuttle disintegrated under a barrage of Cardassian fire. "No!" Lily screamed, tears streaming down her face. Hawkins felt numb, grief and guilt warring inside him, but there was no time to mourn. They had to keep moving. The siren glided into the research station's hangar, the cloak flickering and dying as they touched down. The station was dark and eerily silent, no sign of the scientists who were supposed to be there. Hawkins took Lily's hand, his other gripping his phaser tightly. "Stay close," he whispered as they crept into the shadowy corridors. Strange symbols were scrawled on the walls, cryptic clues left by the missing researchers. Hawkins tried to decipher them as they moved deeper into the bowels of the station, a growing sense of unease prickling his skin. Suddenly a scream echoed from up ahead, sending chills down his spine. He and Lily rounded a corner and froze, confronted by a scene of unimaginable horror. The laboratory was a charnel house filled with the twisted remains of the scientists. They had been experimented on, their bodies fused with grotesque machines, and in the center of it all, a row of stasis pods, each containing a child wired into a nightmarish apparatus. Hawkins fought down a surge of nausea as the truth dawned on him. The scientists hadn't been trying to stop the Cardassians. They had been working with them, developing a way to weaponize children like Lily to turn them into psychic super soldiers. "We have to get out of here," he croaked, pulling Lily back towards the door. But before they could escape, a cold voice rang out, "Leaving so soon?" Dr. Eliza Novak stepped from the shadows, flanked by a squad of heavily armed soldiers. Her face was a mask of cruel amusement. "I'm afraid I can't let you leave, not with our prize specimen." Her gaze fell on Lily, filled with a twisted hunger. Hawkins shoved Lily behind him, raising his phaser. "She's not going anywhere with you." Novak tutted, shaking her head. "Oh, Lieutenant, you have no idea what you're up against, the power we've unlocked. It's beyond your wildest dreams. Join us, and I'll let you live to see it." Hawkins gritted his teeth. He knew he was hopelessly outmatched, but he also knew he would die before he let them take Lily. Then he turned to face Novak, phaser blazing, ready to make his final stand. Phaser blasts ricocheted off the twisted lab equipment as Hawkins dragged Lily into the dark, winding tunnels snaking deep beneath the station's surface. Her small hand gripped his tightly, her breath coming in sharp gasps as they ran. Hawkins could hear the heavy tread of Novak's soldiers close behind, their shouts echoing through the narrow passageways. They rushed down the cramped corridor, the walls pressing in on either side. The air grew colder, the darkness deeper. Then, without warning, the tunnel opened up into a vast circular chamber. Dim light filtered down from cracks in the ceiling far above, casting an eerie bluish glow over the space. Strange machines lined the walls, their surfaces covered in blinking lights and alien symbols. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it rested a small, pulsing orb. As they approached, the orb began to glow brighter, its light reflecting in Lily's wide eyes. Suddenly a ghostly voice filled the chamber, emanating from the orb itself. "I am the Oracle," it intoned, its tone both ancient and otherworldly. Long ago I was created by Cardassian scientists who sought to end their empire's brutal conquest of the galaxy. The key to stopping them lies hidden. The Oracle's next words were drowned out by a sudden explosion. The chamber door burst open, and Novak strode in, flanked by her soldiers, their weapons trained on Hawkins and Lily. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" Novak sneered. "The girl's abilities may be strong, but I have powers of my own." She gestured sharply, and a wave of psychic force slammed into Hawkins, sending him flying. He crashed into a bank of machinery, his head ringing. Through blurred vision, he saw Lily standing alone before the Oracle, her small form dwarfed by Novak and her troops. She reached out, placing her hand on the Oracle's glowing surface. Light exploded outward, blinding in its intensity. Hawkins heard Novak scream, heard the soldiers shouting in confusion and fear. Then, through the chaos came the sound of phaser fire, but it wasn't coming from Novak's troops. A new group of figures burst into the chamber, UEF soldiers led by a familiar face, Captain Allen, his eyes hard and his jaw set. The battle was fierce but brief. Allen's soldiers made quick work of Novak's disoriented troops, while Hawkins struggled to his feet, fighting through the pain to reach Lily's side. Together, they watched as Allen's men secured the chamber, as Novak was forced to her knees, her hands bound behind her back. But even in defeat, Novak's eyes glittered with malice. "You think you've won?" she spat. "You have no idea what you're up against. The girl is more than just a human with powers. She's one of us, a Cardassian hybrid, created to infiltrate and destroy you from within." Lily reeled back as if struck, her face draining of color. She turned to Hawkins, to Allen, her eyes pleading. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Am I one of them?" Allen knelt before her, his gaze gentle. "You are who you choose to be," he said firmly. "Your origins don't define you. Your actions do." He stood, facing his soldiers. "We came here to find a weapon to stop the Cardassians. Instead, we found the key to unlocking an even greater power, the Shadow Fleet." He turned back to Lily, extending his hand. "Will you help us? Will you be the one to light the way to victory?" Lily hesitated, her gaze flicking from Allen to Hawkins and back again. Then slowly she reached out and took the captain's hand. "I will," she said softly. "I'll do whatever it takes to save my people, to save all people." As they stood there, hand in hand, the Oracle pulsed with renewed energy, its ancient voice filling the chamber once more. "The girl has chosen her path. The Shadow Fleet awaits, but the road ahead will be long and fraught with peril. The Cardassians will stop at nothing to prevent you from unlocking its power. You must be ready to sacrifice everything for the sake of the galaxy." Hawkins stepped forward, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. "We'll be ready," he vowed. "No matter the cost, we'll find a way to stop them, to bring peace to the stars." But even as he spoke the words, he could feel a cold sense of dread settling in his gut. For he knew that the Oracle was right. The true battle was only just beginning, and before it was over, they would all be tested in ways they never could have imagined. The chamber fell silent, the weight of the Oracle's prophecy hanging heavy in the air. Allen and his soldiers began to gather up Novak and her troops, preparing to transport them back to the UEF for interrogation and trial. Hawkins knelt beside Lily, who sat slumped against the base of the Oracle's pedestal, her face pale and drawn. "Hey," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her eyes. "It's going to be okay. We'll figure this out together." She looked up at him, her gaze haunted. "But what if Novak was right? What if I am a danger to everyone around me, a threat to the very people I'm trying to save?" Hawkins shook his head firmly. "You are not defined by your DNA," he said, echoing Allen's earlier words. "You are defined by the choices you make, by the person you choose to be. And I know, in my heart, that you are good and kind and brave, that you would never willingly hurt anyone." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she managed a small, tremulous smile. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me, even when I'm not sure I believe in myself." Hawkins helped her to her feet, keeping a supportive arm around her shoulders, as they made their way out of the chamber and back into the winding tunnels of the research station. As they walked, he could feel the weight of the Oracle's words pressing down on him, the knowledge of the impossible task that lay ahead. But he also felt a flicker of hope, small but stubborn, burning in his chest. They had the Oracle now and the key to unlocking the Shadow Fleet. They had Captain Allen and his soldiers, brave men and women willing to fight and die for the cause of freedom. And most of all, they had each other, a bond forged in the heat of battle and the depths of shared pain. Together they would find a way to stop the Cardassians, to bring an end to their reign of terror and oppression. No matter the odds, no matter the cost, they would fight on, for the sake of the galaxy, for the sake of all those who called it home. As they emerged from the tunnels and into the bright light of the research station's hangar bay, Hawkins felt Lily's hand slip into his own, her fingers intertwining with his. A silent promise, a vow of unity in the face of the darkness to come. They boarded the waiting UEF shuttle, strapping themselves in as the engines hummed to life. As the craft lifted off and streaked out into the star-strewn void of space, Hawkins leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion of the past few hours wash over him. There would be time for rest later, he knew, time to heal, to regroup, to plan their next move. But for now, all that mattered was that they were together, a small, flickering light in the vast darkness of the galaxy. A light that, with luck and courage and the strength of their bond, just might be enough to guide them through the shadows and into the dawn of a new era of peace. As the siren shuddered and groaned under the onslaught of the Devastator's weapons, Hawkins gripped the controls with white knuckles, desperately trying to evade the deadly barrage. Beside him, Allen shouted orders to the crew, his face grim as he watched the shields rapidly depleting. "We can't take much more of this," Hawkins yelled over the cacophony of alarms and explosions. Suddenly, a searing bolt of energy slammed into the siren's port side, tearing through the hull like tissue paper. The ship lurched violently, throwing Hawkins from his seat. He hit the deck hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. Through the haze of pain and confusion, he heard Lily scream. Hawkins struggled to his feet, his eyes scanning the smoke-filled bridge. Lily was nowhere to be seen. "Lily!" he shouted, his voice raw with desperation. "Where are you?" "We have to go after her," he said to Allen, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "We can't let them use her powers to unlock the Shadow Fleet." Allen nodded grimly. "Agreed, but we can't take the siren. She's too badly damaged." Hawkins' mind raced, searching for a solution. Then a reckless idea formed in his mind. "What about a shuttle?" he asked. "If we could sneak aboard the Devastator, we might be able to find Lily and sabotage the ship from the inside." Allen considered the plan for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. "It's risky," he said finally, "but it might be our only chance." They quickly made their way to the shuttle bay, where they found a small Cardassian craft that had been captured in a previous battle. Hawkins and Allen boarded the shuttle, along with a handful of their most trusted soldiers, and launched into space, heading straight for the looming bulk of the Devastator. As they approached the massive warship, Hawkins felt a sense of dread wash over him. The Devastator was a behemoth, bristling with weapons and teeming with Cardassian soldiers. Finding Lily and sabotaging the ship would be like finding a needle in a haystack. But they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The shuttle docked with the Devastator, and Hawkins and Allen quickly dispatched the Cardassian guards who came to investigate. They made their way into the ship's labyrinthine corridors, their weapons at the ready, searching for any sign of Lily. As they rounded a corner, they stumbled upon a group of human prisoners huddled together in a cramped cell. Hawkins's heart leapt into his throat as he recognized one of them, a young girl with haunted eyes and matted hair. "Mira," he whispered, hardly daring to believe it. The girl looked up at him, her face etched with fear and desperation. "You have to help us," she pleaded. "The Cardassian, they're going to kill us all." Hawkins glanced at Allen, who nodded grimly. They couldn't leave these people to die. Quickly, they freed the prisoners from their cell and led them through the twisting corridors of the Devastator, searching for a way out. As they ran, Mira grabbed Hawkins' arm, her eyes wide with urgency. Hawkins hesitated, torn between his desire to find Lily and his duty to stop the Cardassians from unlocking the Shadow Fleet's power. But as he looked into Mira's eyes, he saw a flicker of something familiar, the same otherworldly glow that he had seen in Lily's eyes when she unleashed her psychic abilities. But before they could make their decision, the Devastator shuddered violently, the deck beneath their feet bucking and heaving like a wild animal. Alarms blared throughout the ship, and the acrid stench of smoke filled the air. Hawkins shook his head, his mind racing, and then, with a sudden flash of insight, he knew. "It's Rhys," he said, a grim smile spreading across his face. He must have survived the destruction of his ship and infiltrated the Devastator on his own. Alan's eyes widened in shock. "You mean he's sabotaging the ship?" Hawkins nodded. "It's the only explanation." The deck shuddered again, more violently this time, and Hawkins knew they were running out of time. They had to find Lily and get off the ship before it was too late. With Mira leading the way, they raced through the corridors of the Devastator, dodging falling debris and frantically searching for any sign of Lily. The ship was coming apart around them, the metal groaning and screeching as it was torn asunder by the explosions rocking its hull. Finally, they reached the brig where Lily was being held. Hawkins' heart leapt into his throat as he saw her, bruised and battered but alive, huddled in the corner of her cell. "Lily!" he cried, rushing forward to free her from her bonds. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear and relief. "Hawkins," she whispered, her voice hoarse, "you came for me." But there was no time for reunions. The Devastator was on the verge of complete destruction, and they had to get off the ship before it was too late. Hawkins and Alan led the way, guiding Lily and the other prisoners through the crumbling corridors of the Devastator. The ship shuddered and groaned around them, the metal twisting and buckling as the explosions grew more intense. Suddenly, a massive blast rocked the ship, sending them all tumbling to the deck. Hawkins looked up, his eyes wide with horror, as he saw a gaping hole torn in the side of the corridor, the blackness of space yawning before them. "We have to move," he shouted, hauling himself to his feet. They ran, their lungs burning and their hearts pounding, as the Devastator disintegrated around them. Twice more they were nearly thrown into the void by the force of the explosions, but somehow they managed to stay on their feet and keep moving. At last, they reached the hangar bay where their stolen shuttle was waiting. Hawkins and Alan hurried the prisoners aboard, then turned to face each other, their eyes locked in a moment of silent understanding. They had done it. Against all odds they had rescued Lily and the other prisoners, and struck a crippling blow against the Cardassian war machine. But the fight was far from over. As the shuttle rocketed away from the dying Devastator, Hawkins felt a sense of grim determination settle over him. They had won this battle, but the war was just beginning, and with the Shadow Fleet still out there, waiting to be unleashed, the stakes had never been higher. He glanced at Lily, huddled in the corner of the shuttle, her eyes haunted and her face pale. He knew that she held the key to unlocking the Shadow Fleet's power, and that the Cardassians would stop at nothing to possess her. But he also knew that he would die before he let them lay a hand on her again. She was more than just a weapon to him, more than just a means to an end. She was a frightened, lonely girl who needed his protection, and he would give it to her, no matter the cost. As the shuttle hurtled through the darkness of space, Hawkins steeled himself for the battles to come. The road ahead would be long and perilous, and there was no telling what dangers they would face. But with Lily by his side, and the courage of his comrades in his heart, he knew that they would find a way to prevail. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who could tip the scales in favor of freedom and justice. It was a heavy burden to bear, but it was one that Hawkins would gladly shoulder for the sake of all those who depended on him. The Devastator shook violently, explosions ripping through its hull. Smoke filled the corridors as Hawkins and Alan raced through the crumbling ship, Lily and the other prisoners in tow. Rhys led the way, his weapon at the ready, taking out any Cardassian soldier that dared to stand in their path. "The escape pods are just ahead," Rhys shouted over the cacophony of alarms and twisting metal. "You're not going anywhere," Karos snarled, his weapon trained on Lily. "The girl is coming with me." Hawkins hesitated, not wanting to leave Rhys behind, but a look from the sergeant told him there was no other choice. With a nod, Hawkins grabbed Lily's hand and ran for the pods, Alan and the prisoners close behind. Rhys and Karos circled each other, their eyes locked in a deadly stare. Then, with a roar, Karos charged, his weapon forgotten in favor of brutal hand-to-hand combat. Rhys met him head-on, his fists and feet a blur of motion as he fought to keep the Cardassian commander at bay. As the pods righted themselves, Hawkins looked back at the debris field that had once been the Devastator. There was no sign of Rhys or Karos, both consumed by the inferno. "He sacrificed himself for us," Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face. Hawkins put a comforting hand on her shoulder, his own heart heavy with grief. But there was no time to mourn. The sensors on the pod's control panel lit up, warning of incoming ships. The pods wove and dodged, trying to evade the incoming fire. But the Cardassians were relentless, their ships closing in from all sides. Mira, who had been silent since their escape, suddenly spoke up. "I can guide us through their blockade," she said, her voice distant and her eyes unfocused. "But you have to trust me." Hawkins and Alan exchanged a glance, both knowing they had no other choice. With a nod, Hawkins relinquished control of the pod to Mira. The young girl closed her eyes, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then, with a sudden jerk, the pods veered off course, diving and weaving through the Cardassian ships with impossible precision. The Cardassians, caught off guard by the sudden maneuver, scrambled to keep up. But Mira was always one step ahead, guiding the pods through a dizzying series of twists and turns that left their pursuers far behind. As they flew, Mira began to speak, her voice low and haunted. "The Cardassians took me when I was just a child," she said. "They subjected me to their experiments, trying to unlock the secrets of my abilities. But I was not the only one." She told them of the other prisoners, of the horrors they had endured at the hands of the Cardassian scientists, of the failed experiments, the lives lost, and the powers unleashed. "We were meant to be weapons," Mira said, her voice trembling. "But some of us proved too difficult to control. We were deemed failures, scheduled for termination. But a group of Cardassian scientists, those who opposed the Empire's cruelty, helped us escape." Hawkins listened in stunned silence, his mind reeling at the implications of Mira's words. The Cardassians had been experimenting on humans, trying to create an army of psychic warriors, and Lily, with her incredible abilities, was the key to their plans. Suddenly, the comm system crackled to life, a familiar voice filling the pod. "Hawkins, Alan, do you read me?" It was Captain Bruce, his voice strained but filled with relief. "I've got a fleet of UEF ships with me. We're on our way to intercept you now." Hawkins felt a surge of hope at Bruce's words. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance after all. But Bruce's next words brought him crashing back to reality. "I have new orders from UEF Command," the captain said, his voice grave. "The Shadow Fleet must be activated, no matter the cost, and Lily must be protected at all costs. She's the key to ending this war." Hawkins looked at Lily, saw the fear and determination in her eyes. She was just a child, thrust into a war she never asked for. And now, the fate of the entire galaxy rested on her small shoulders. As the pods flew onwards, Hawkins couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Shadow Fleet, the Cardassian experiments, Lily's powers. It all felt like pieces of a much larger puzzle, one that he was afraid to see completed. But there was no turning back now. The Cardassians would stop at nothing to capture Lily and unlock the secrets of her abilities. And the UEF, desperate to end the war, would sacrifice anything to activate the Shadow Fleet. Caught between two unstoppable forces, Hawkins knew that the true nature of the conflict was only just beginning to reveal itself, and as they flew towards their final confrontation, He couldn't shake the feeling that the price of victory might be more than any of them were willing to pay. As the Shadow Fleet surged forward under Lily's command, the Cardassian armada crumbled before its onslaught. The ancient warships tore through the enemy fleet with ruthless efficiency, their advanced weaponry and psychic energy shielding making them all but invincible. On the bridge of the Titan, Hawkins and Allen watched the carnage unfold on the viewscreen, their faces grim. The Shadow Fleet's power was undeniable, but at what cost? "She's not the same," Hawkins muttered, his eyes fixed on Lily's image. The young girl stood at the center of the Shadow Fleet's command deck, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "It's like she's not even human anymore." Allen nodded, his brow furrowed. "The fleet is changing her," he said. "We have to find a way to break its hold on her mind." Suddenly Mira stumbled onto the bridge, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. "It's too late," she gasped, her voice trembling. "The Shadow Fleet. It's not just a weapon. It's alive, and it's hungry." Hawkins and Allen exchanged a worried glance, but before they could respond, the viewscreen flickered and the image of the Cardassian Emperor, Zorkax, appeared before them. "Are you fools?" the Emperor hissed, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." Hawkins stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "What are you talking about?" Zorkax laughed, a harsh grating sound. "The Overseer," he spat. "The true master of the Shadow Fleet. It has been manipulating us all from the beginning, using the Cardassians as pawns in its grand plan." Allen's eyes narrowed. "And what is this plan?" The Emperor's face twisted into a sneer. "The complete annihilation of all life in the galaxy," he said. "The Shadow Fleet is the key to its success, and your precious Lily is the vessel through which it will achieve its goal." Hawkins and Allen reeled back in shock, their minds racing. Could it be true? Was the Shadow Fleet really a tool of destruction, created by some ancient, malevolent force? As they struggled to process this revelation, a sudden, sickening lurch shook the Titan. The ship's alarms blared, and the viewscreen flickered and died. "Report," Allen barked, his eyes scanning the bridge. "It's the Shadow Fleet," one of the officers replied, his voice shaking. "They've turned on us. They're attacking the UEF ships." Hawkins and Allen watched in horror as the Shadow Fleet tore through their own allies, their weapons cutting through the UEF ships like they were made of paper. The Titan shuddered under the onslaught, its shields straining to hold back the relentless barrage. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the attack ceased. An eerie silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the distant sounds of explosions and the groans of dying ships. Hawkins and Allen stood frozen, their minds reeling. What had they done? What had they unleashed upon the galaxy? And then a voice spoke, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You have served your purpose," it said, its tone cold and inhuman. "The Shadow Fleet is mine now, and through it I will cleanse this galaxy of the stain of life." The voice seemed to coalesce, taking on a physical form. A massive, otherworldly entity appeared before them, its form shifting and twisting in ways that defied comprehension. The Overseer, for that was surely what it was, towered over them, its presence filling the bridge with a suffocating sense of dread. Its eyes, if they could be called that, fixed upon Hawkins and Allen with a malevolent intensity. "The girl is mine now," it said, its voice like the scraping of metal on bone. "She will be the instrument of your destruction, and the destruction of all life in this galaxy." Hawkins and Allen could only watch, frozen in horror, as the Overseer's form began to blur and shift, merging with the Shadow Fleet until they were one and the same. And at the center of it all stood Lily, her eyes black and soulless, her mind and will subsumed by the Overseer's insidious influence. As the Shadow Fleet turned its weapons upon the Titan, Hawkins and Allen knew that they had only one chance, one desperate hope, to save not only themselves, but the entire galaxy. They had to find a way to break the Overseer's hold on Lily, to turn the Shadow Fleet against its creator, before it was too late. As the Overseer's malevolent presence loomed ever closer, Hawkins and Allen fought their way through the twisting corridors of the Shadow Fleet, their weapons blazing. The once pristine walls were now blackened and warped, pulsing with an eerie, sickly light. Around them, the remnants of the UEF forces battled against the Overseer's thralls, their faces twisted in agony as they fought against the entity's insidious control. Mira, her eyes glowing with newfound power, led the way, her steps sure and purposeful. "We're close," she said, her voice echoing strangely in the distorted air. "I can feel the Overseer's presence, like a dark weight pressing down on my mind." As they rounded a final corner, they found themselves in a vast cavernous space, its walls lined with pulsing veins of energy. And there, at the center of it all, stood Lily, her body wreathed in a halo of sickly green light. "Lily!" Hawkins cried out, his voice raw with desperation. "Lily, it's us. Please, you have to fight it." But Lily's eyes, once so bright and full of life, were now cold and empty, glowing with the same otherworldly light that suffused the chamber. She raised a hand, and a wave of psychic energy slammed into Hawkins and Allen, sending them flying backwards. They crashed to the ground, their bodies broken and bleeding. Mira stepped forward, her own hands glowing with a soft, radiant light. "Lily," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I know you're still in there. I can feel you, fighting against the Overseer's control. You're not alone. We're here to help you." Lily's face twitched, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. But then the Overseer's presence surged forward, its voice booming through the chamber. "Foolish mortals!" it snarled, its words dripping with contempt. "You cannot hope to stand against me. I am eternal, unstoppable." Mira shook her head, her eyes blazing with determination. "No," she said, her voice ringing with power. "You are not eternal. You are not unstoppable. You are a relic of a bygone age, a parasite that feeds on the suffering of others, and we will end you here and now." When the light faded, a new being stood before them, its form both familiar and utterly alien. It was Lily and Mira, and yet it was neither, a fusion of their consciousnesses and powers that transcended the boundaries of flesh and bone. "Overseer," the being said, its voice echoing through the minds of every living thing in the galaxy, "your time is at an end. The cycle of destruction and rebirth that you have perpetuated for so long must now be broken. We will not allow you to bring any more suffering to the universe." The Overseer let out a roar of rage, and the Shadow Fleet began to shudder and convulse around them, its ancient weapon systems coming to life. But the Guardian, wielding the combined might of Lily and Mira's powers, stood firm against the onslaught. Beams of energy lanced out from the Shadow Fleet's ships, searing through the void of space towards the Guardian. But the entity merely raised a hand, and the beams dissipated harmlessly against an invisible barrier, scattering into motes of light that danced and flickered in the darkness. The Overseer, its form writhing with fury, unleashed a torrent of psychic energy, a maelstrom of pure, unbridled hate that threatened to consume everything in its path. But the Guardian met the attack head-on, its own power surging forth to counter the Overseer's malevolent will. The two entities clashed in a cataclysmic explosion of light and sound, their energies intertwining and annihilating each other in a fierce battle that shook the very foundations of reality. Stars flickered and died, entire solar systems consumed by the maelstrom of power that raged between the Guardian and the Overseer. But in the end, the Guardian emerged victorious, its light shining bright and pure against the darkness. The Overseer, its form shattered and broken, let out a final, agonized scream as its essence was scattered to the far reaches of the galaxy, never to be reunited again. As the Shadow Fleet began to break apart around them, its ancient technology and psychic energy dissipating into the void, Hawkins and Allen could only watch in stunned silence. The Guardian, its task complete, began to fade away, its consciousness unraveling as Lily and Mira's essences separated once more. Lily, her body battered and bruised but her eyes clear and bright once more, collapsed into Hawkins's arms, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Mira, her own form flickering and ethereal, stood beside them, a sad smile on her face. Hawkins and Alan could only nod, their hearts heavy with the weight of all they had lost. As they made their way back to the waiting UEF fleet, picking their way through the debris of the shattered Shadow fleet, they knew that the galaxy had been saved, but at a terrible cost. And as they looked out at the stars, their minds turning to the uncertain future that lay ahead, they couldn't help but wonder if the sacrifices they had made would be enough to build a better tomorrow, or if the wounds of the past would prove too deep to heal. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.